We are going to try something a little different today. Instead of talking about college football video games, we are going to be talking about real life college football. I assume if you are subscribed to this channel, you are a massive college football fan just like me. If you follow me on Instagram at BringNCAA I assume you're a big college football fan. So I was going to try something a little new here and talk about real life college football on the channel. We'll see how this goes. If nobody watches it, nobody cares, then we'll just continue with the regular content. I'm still going to be talking about college football 25 and 26 and 27 and all those games, but I also want to mix in a little bit of real life college football. So today we are going to recap this past Saturday. We had 4 college football games for week 0. So we're going to do a quick little recap. So obviously the big game was number 10 Florida State versus Georgia Tech in Ireland. Georgia Tech went on to win this game 24-21 in a massive upset. And I think some people forgot that Georgia Tech was actually a pretty competitive team last year. And so they just kind of thought Florida State was going to steamroll them. I figured this game would be somewhat close. I obviously wasn't picking Georgia Tech though. I did think Florida State was going to win this game. But I don't think Georgia Tech was getting the respect they deserved before this game. And when you watched the opening drive, it honestly looked like Florida State was going to steamroll them. I mean, they just came out 5 yards, 6 yards, 10 yards, methodically down the field, took an 8-0 lead with a cool 2-point conversion. But Georgia Tech came right back, and they had some really big plays in their first drive, as you can see right here, and they ended up scoring as well to make it an 8-7 ball game. I think what really surprised me about this game, though, was how well Georgia Tech matched up with Florida State, though. They did not get bullied. They did not get pushed around. Like I said, that first drive, it looked like Florida State was going to push them around, was going to bully them, but Georgia Tech matched up with them really, really well in the trenches. On the line of scrimmage, Georgia Tech had the size, had the speed, had the toughness to go out there and win this game. I want to reiterate, though, that Georgia Tech was a solid team last year. They went 7-6. I think they finished 4th in the ACC. So, this was not a bad team. People just assumed this was the typical Georgia Tech, 4-8 team that was going to get killed. And I think they also might have assumed Florida State was the same team as last year. Florida State lost so many players from this past year's team that went undefeated. They did pick up several key transfers, one of them obviously being quarterback DJ Uiagalelei, and we'll talk about him here in a second. So when you take those things into consideration, Georgia Tech is a solid team that is returning a bunch of talent. Florida State was losing a bunch of talent. It's week 1. It's in Ireland. It was just set up perfectly for that Georgia Tech upset. And like I said, Georgia Tech did not get bullied. I mean, they averaged 5.3 yards per carry. I mean, they don't have a super explosive offense, but it worked. They were able to score points when they needed to. And Florida State, ultimately, their offense looked super lackluster. One bright spot for Florida State is Ryan Fitzgerald, as you can see from this clip right here. He hit 2 massive field goals, a 52-yarder and then a 59-yarder right there, right before halftime to tie the football game up. Those 2 field goals were massive for points as well as momentum. But again, Georgia Tech looked like the better team. Just what a great job that head coach Brent Key has done with the Yellow Jackets. Already just completely flipped this program around. So let's talk about Florida State quarterback DJ Uiagalelei for a second. Obviously his 3rd team in college football. Most people know his name by now. He spent 3 years at Clemson. This past year he was at Oregon State, and now he's with the Seminoles. So I remember him as a true freshman in 2020. He had to come in and play for an injured Trevor Lawrence. He played 2 games, and he balled out. His stats on the year, he finished with a 67% completion percentage, 914 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. And I thought this guy was the truth. I had them coming into 2021 as the number 1 team in college football, and obviously that did not pan out that well. So despite balling out his freshman year at Clemson, in 2021, he was not good at all, threw 9 touchdowns, 10 picks. 2022, we all know he got benched in favor of Cade Klubnik. And then he would transfer to Oregon State, had a pretty solid year, 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 picks, but nothing insane. But Oregon State was obviously a pretty solid team, and now he's here at FSU. And not off to a great start, losing to Georgia Tech. I will say this drive right here that you were watching, they completed 2 different 4th downs to keep this drive alive and end up tying the game. He looked pretty solid on this drive, so maybe there's some hope there. I don't think he looked bad. I don't think he was horrendous or anything. but definitely not exactly what you want to see. But at the very least, if they can get the DJ from last year that played at Oregon State that had like a pretty solid year, he didn't normally turn the ball over that much. Florida State is still going to be a decent team. They only gave up 24 points. Obviously, there's still some issues there on defense. Like I said, over 5 yards per carry for Georgia Tech, but they only gave up 24 points. The offense is just going to have to be more consistent moving forward. But with the 12-team playoff, they are not out of it by any means. If they finish 10-2 or something, like they have a solid chance of getting to the playoff. They still can find their way maybe into the ACC championship. So it'll be interesting to see. Everything is changed with this 12-team playoff because if you lose a game early, you're not out of it. Whereas, previously with the 14 playoff, there's a good chance you were done if you lost a game at basically any point. Aiden Burr hit the game-winning field goal right here, 44 yards as time expires to give Georgia Tech the 24-21 win. Awesome game, dude. First game of the year was just insane. Absolutely loved it. College football is back. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see how Georgia Tech season goes. They have one of the hardest schedules in the country. They just faced number 10 Florida State. Obviously, they have to go at Louisville, at North Carolina, number 7 Notre Dame. They get them at home, at Virginia Tech, which is pretty tough. But then they finish with an absolute brutal stretch. Number 19 Miami, number 24 NC State, and then they have to go to Georgia. So obviously, super tough. We'll see what Georgia Tech can do with that schedule. They might still be looking at 4 or 5 losses, but a bowl game for Georgia Tech is fantastic, and now they're at the top of the ACC standings. Let's move on to the next game. We had SMU taking on Nevada. SMU ended up winning 29-24, but it was extremely close down to the wire. SMU was a 27.5-point favorite and only ended up winning this game by 5. Nevada was up 24-13 with 8 minutes to go. And out of all the games that we had this past Saturday, this was the one where I was like, SMU's definitely covering, right? SMU is returning Preston Stone at quarterback. They have Miami transfer Brashard Smith at running back. They return RJ Maryland at receiver. I think they returned their top 3 leading tacklers from this past season, and they went 11-3 last year. So I was like, okay, this is the one. SMU is going to absolutely rout Nevada. Nevada went 2-10 last year. And Nevada should have won this football game. Somehow, some way, they blew this football game. Now, if SMU was still in the American Conference, they might have been my group of 5 pick to go to the playoff because, again, they were really good last year, returning a bunch of talent. But now, I don't know, especially because they're in the ACC. But looking at their schedule, extremely manageable. Probably one of the easiest group of 4 schedules in the nation. Their only currently ranked opponent is number 10 Florida State, who obviously just lost to Georgia Tech. So after that, they really don't have anyone that's even ranked. I mean, they play TCU. At Louisville might be the hardest game. They play Pitt. They play at Duke. TCU, I mean, they really don't have anybody I think at Louisville's probably their toughest game other than Florida State, depending on how good Florida State ends up being the rest of the way. So we'll have to see. But I mean, they sneak by Nevada here. If they had blown out Nevada, looking at their schedule, it's like, dude, even in the ACC, they legit have a shot at the playoff because if they get into the ACC championship, who knows what happens, right? But after their performance against Nevada, I'm not too sure. But who knows? Maybe Nevada is improved from last year. They return Brendan Lewis at quarterback, the Colorado transfer. Maybe Nevada ends up winning, 5, 6, 7 games, and it's actually not that terrible of a win for SMU. So it'll be interesting to see how SMU does in the ACC this year. Like I said, extremely easy schedule. They sneak by Nevada here in week 0. I mean, that's how it is just all around the country this year. New playoff, new conferences, new teams. It's a lot of fun. Next, we have Montana State versus New Mexico. New Mexico blew 2 different 17-point leads to lose this game. Montana State is an FCS school, and a lot of people were picking New Mexico to win this game just based on that because it's an FCS school without really knowing anything about Montana State. Montana State is a very good FCS program, and they were actually favored by 13.5 in this game. However, New Mexico still should have won this football game. Again, they were up 17-0. Entering the fourth quarter, they were up 31-14. 2 different 17-point leads that they blew. And Montana State ended up scoring 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to win this football game. Absolutely insane. New Mexico at one point had like a 99% chance to win. Adam Jones ripped off this 93-yard touchdown run right here to make it a 3-point game with about 4.5 minutes to go. And then again, Montana State came down and scored on the following drive as well. So this was our first FCS win over an FBS team this year in 2024. You gotta love it. I mean, it's just college football, man. There's nothing better than it. So Montana State takes this one 35-31. New Mexico plays Arizona next, and then Auburn. They gotta play Wazoo later in the year since the Pac-12 no longer exists. So probably not going to be a great year again for New Mexico. They went 4-8 last year. Probably going to see something similar this year. Last but not least, we have Hawaii versus Delaware State. Hawaii won this one 35-14. Hawaii was up 14-0, and actually Delaware State tied it up 14-14. But then Hawaii went on to score 21 unanswered. Hawaii was favored by almost 40 points, so definitely did not cover the spread. But still, they got the win. So we'll see how Hawaii ends up turning out this year. They haven't been good the past couple years under head coach Timmy Chang. And that's basically it for this recap. Like I said, only 4 games for week 0. If y'all are enjoying this type of content, definitely let me know. I might do one of these like once a week after each Saturday, after all the games, do a little recap, talk about records and stats and highlights and playoff implications and all of that. Week 1 is next week. We even have some games on Thursday, a bunch of games on Saturday, so it'll be a lot of fun. College football is here. The video game college football is here, as well as the actual IRL college football. It is here as well. If you enjoy this content, definitely leave a like. Follow me on Instagram at BringNCAA Back, and subscribe here for more content just like this.